Hey, welcome to the QFiscal demonstration. I'm John Coggle. I'm the Director of Marketing for QFiscal. QFiscal is a condominium and homeowner association accounting and management software system. It's cloud-based and is designed primarily for management companies who manage multiple associations, but can very easily be turned into a standalone application for a single entity who wanted to license it. So today we are going to cover the setting up an assessment, and we're going to actually set up a regular operating assessment for my Vancouver Test Condominium Association. As Jay Coggle, I'm logged in as the bookkeeper at the Vancouver Test Condominium Association. Everything we do with QFiscal is role-based, so a user can have one or more roles, but the roles define what steps they can and can't perform. So in this case, the bookkeeper can go into the association management and can create a new assessment. So when you click on the assessments, you see this page, which will give you a list of all the assessments that have been created and potentially are running, or they're still sitting as a draft waiting for approvals. So as the bookkeeper, I just found out that the board recently passed a brand new assessment for the upcoming fiscal year. So create new. And what we could do here is we come in here and say it's a charge type, it's an operating assessment. It's for the 2018 year. Under revenue cycle, you have the choice to make it a one-time charge, which means it'll basically generate the revenue on the date that it's posted and approved. You can have it post monthly, quarterly, or annually at the end of every year. So we want it to run monthly because we're going to run monthly financial statements. Its creation date is basically the date that it was approved by the board. In this case, since we're making it for this fiscal year, we'll go back to December and we'll click on December 20th. Date of the meeting. The lien security interest is simply an informational at this stage for the beta. We are planning on ultimately allowing it to generate particular documentation for you. But in the meantime, yes, it's going to be subject to liens and security interests. So that when the bank or the board passed its the assessment, they said it was going to be for $240,000, and it's going to start in January. It's going to post on the first day. We give an option between the first day and the last day. It's just a choice of when you want it to show up in the general ledger. Typically, there's nothing wrong with either way. We just generally pick the first day of the month. You can then select its posting account. In this case, we're going to have it go to the assessments. And because it's an operating assessment, it's going to go to the operating fund. Description is just a very brief description of what the assessment is. You can make it as simple and straightforward as possible, or if it's something you need a little more complex description for, you can enter as many characters as you need to. So in this case, we'll just say it's the operating assessment for the 2018 budget year. The approved by allows you to select how it came into being. Was it by the board vote, owner special meeting, owner annual meeting, or was it strictly because the board passed their approved expenditure budget and we're trying to match it up? So what we've tried to do here is help you with the documentation for that inevitable audit that always pops up, and one of the questions that always comes up from the auditor is, how did this assessment come to be? So in this case, it was passed at the owner annual meeting. It was also passed on that December 20th date. The dates are different for a reason. You could actually have it to where the create date is, say, going to be January 1st. Because that's going to be the day it's going to start creating it. It's strictly whatever you think is the best way to do it. The percentage approval is basically for those where you want to be able to document that it passed by a certain percentage. Some states say 50 plus 1%, or it has to be a supermajority, or it can even be it has to be a majority to reject, in which case it approves by that percentage if it's went ahead and passed. So in this case, when the owners held their vote, we'll say they voted for 67% voted to approve this assessment. The references is for you to update or upload any files you feel are necessary to support this transaction. So it could very well be that you have the minutes, and you'd like to have that the copy of those minutes be here to support this transaction. So anything that would help with the audit documentation is really what you put here. Now, where QFiscal is unique is we split out the revenue part of it from the collections part of it. So the payments in this case are going to be due quarterly. The payments are going to end in December, and so that's supposed to term is supposed to change to month to 4, but okay. Oh, never mind. It's going to run for 12 months, but it's going to only happen every quarter. The interest rate that's going to be charged is going to be 0 because it's an operating assessment. The late payment grace period is going to be 5 days. It's going to be $35 for a late payment, and if you issue as a bounce check, it's going to be $25. The full payment grace period is really more for the special assessments, but we can put it in here as if you want to. In this case, put it in 5 days. And then you can come in and you can allocate it by the voting percentage or the declared percentages coming out of your formation documents. You can have specific units if there's a particular assessment you need to, or a charge that looks like an assessment is going to go to particular people, or any of the limited groups that were set up that we explained in the blog from the 24th. So in this case, we're going to say it's going to go by the vote to everybody over their voting percentage. And what will happen is the system will go through, pull all the units, and tell you all their various percentages that they owe. Well, it's a good thing I didn't save it. Voting percentage. There we go. It'll go through, give it a second, and there it is. And so then it'll tell you what their minimum, what the annual they're going to owe, and what that minimum quarterly payment's going to look like. As the bookkeeper, I can save it, but I can't approve. And so now it is simply sitting here, draft 4, operating assessment for the 2018 budget year, waiting for approval. Somebody with the approval authorization, like the administrator or maybe the controller, could log in. And the screen will then flash to where it'll allow for the assessments. So there you go, and then come over here, click on the approve button, approve icon. It'll run you through, it'll show you all the information that went into it, make sure you're comfortable with it, and if you have the approval right, you click approve. So that's how our assessments work. It's fairly simple, straightforward. Everything is laid out for you, and we'll then start calculating and reporting the information in the correct periods without anyone from accounting or the managing team having to go back in and redo any work. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email at john@qfiscal.com, or feel free to just send us a message through our Facebook or our LinkedIn pages. Anyway, thank you very much. And our next session, we will be covering the fines, fees, and unit charges.